Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by the generosity of the following companies. The Old Mill Press, publishing beautifully crafted books that illuminate our world. To learn more, visit theoldmillpress.com. And by listeners like you.
Hello, this is Uncle Pigors, and you're listening to Skull Rock Podcast.
Skull Rock Podcast, where you hear the stories behind the adventures. With your hosts, Aljon Go and Dave Bossert.
Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Every week, we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, music, as well as what's streaming, what's in theaters, and what's going on in this universe of entertainment. I'm Aljon Go, musician and longtime Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, and pop culturist, and you can email me, Aljon, A-L-J-O-N, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert, artist, filmmaker, author, and welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also email me, Dave, at skullrockpodcast.com. Well, Aljon, we've got a fabulous show. It's one of our truncated programs. We're just going to go right into the interview that we're doing with Bob Weis, the former president of Imagineering and author extraordinaire. And we're going to be talking to Bob today about his new novel. This is his debut novel, Ghost Dog. So I'm looking forward to that.
Just in time for the holiday season as Halloween rears its head, and we're looking forward to sitting down right now and chit-chatting with Bob right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
Let's do it.
Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by listeners like you. We would like to thank Christine Banas, Spencer Wright, Lindsay Scaife, and Joshua Volkert. Support the show for as little as 99 cents per month by clicking on our listener support link in our show notes. If you are interested in advertising your event, business, or service, please email Aljon at skullrockpodcast.com. Thank you for your ongoing support.
Podcast interview time.
Well, Aljon, here we are again. We've got a very prestigious guest to join us here on the Skull Rock Podcast. We've got former president of Walt Disney Imagineering and a Walt Disney Imagineering ambassador, a 40-plus year Imagineer, and an author, Bob Weis, joining us here. Bob, welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Oh, thank you both. It's great to be here. Great to be on Skull Rock. Thank you. Excited.
Well, now, Bob, we're going to talk mostly about your new book coming out, or books, I should say, because you got two new books coming out. But we're going to focus on one of them predominantly. That's The Ghost Dog, which is a novel that you've written. But before we do that, I really want to sort of step back in time and say, how did you get involved in becoming an Imagineer? Can you just briefly take our listeners through your journey?
Well, Dave, thank you. And Imagineering is a great place, a really unique place, as many of the listeners know, and a unique place that has been a part of the creation of Disneyland and every park and every cruise ship and every hotel around the world. And I'll tell you, I had a very deeply planned career. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I targeted it and I went for it. And then I went to Imagineering and it was a complete accident. I had no idea. I had worked one summer at Disneyland as an ice cream and popcorn vendor, and I wasn't very good at it. And then I finished college. I studied a combination of theater and architecture, and I really didn't know what I was going to do. And I was walking by my classroom one day, and there was literally a table out there, and they were recruiting for Imagineers. And I ran up to my locker, got the sort of parts of my portfolio, threw it together really quickly and showed it to them. And the rest is sort of history, but I got an interview. I got in, and it was the recruiter said, you have the right combination, because you have architecture skills, you have design skills, but you have the ability to, obviously, from your theater background, to tell stories, which is really what Imagineering is all about. So I was very, very lucky, Dave. You'll have to agree with me on that.
I do agree, but you just told us a lot of stuff that I want to unpack a little bit. I want to step back because you said you were an ice cream and popcorn vendor and weren't very good at it. Can you elaborate on that? I'd like to know why you feel
You mean, how could
weren't.
you possibly not be good at it?
I want to understand how you were not good at that, and if you could tell us a few little stories that may pop to
Well,
mind.
like most things, there's a little bit more to the story, but I took a summer job at Disneyland. I was hoping I would be like the ride operator at Pirates of the Caribbean, or some really cool job like that. But instead, I got a job as an ice cream popcorn vendor, and I loved it. I really did, because you're out on the street, you're in Disneyland, you're meeting people all day long. It is a really great thing to do as a summer job. But in the fall, as I was going back to school.
Hold on.
Sorry, Bob.
No problem.
The app just crashed.
All right, I'm recording
no.
on my side.
Okay.
So you want to just keep going?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm going to suss out my stuff here. Hold on. Go ahead. Go ahead. We'll take it from here.
Okay. So I enjoyed working at Disneyland so much, and I actually enjoyed learning the popcorn business, the ice cream business. I was good at it. I was very neat and concise and friendly to guests, all those things. But in the fall was when Disneyland took over what had been historically an outside vendor, which was the balloon franchise, the balloon sales. And it was obviously taken over by Outdoor Foods, because they were the people who were kind of out on the street meeting guests. And I did balloons one day. I could not count out the right number of balloons. They exploded in my face. And then I could not keep the strings from getting tangled. And here's the dark secret of Disneyland. Everybody who goes in the gate tells their kid, what do they tell them? They say, we'll buy you a balloon on the way out. And so all those people leaving the park at midnight or whatever, depending on the night, are all going to hit the same poor balloon vendor at the same time.
Wow.
And I just could not deal with the stress. And so that was the end of my Disney career right there.
So that was it. You ended your job?
I told them if I had to do balloons again, I could not work there anymore. And they said, well, you can't run away from your problems. So you're not going to work here anymore. Today, they would have probably said, oh, it's okay. We'd like you to stay. You don't have to work balloons anymore.
Don't let Bob have balloons. He'll be triggered by them.
He'll be triggered by them. It's like curly and tassels. It's.
So, all right. So we've got that out of the way. I was just curious about what had happened.
Yeah, it was almost the end of my Disney career right there.
But you wound up getting hired because the recruiter was at school, and you had the right combination of things in your portfolio that they said, hey, they offered you a job.
Well, the summer that I worked at Disneyland was the summer that Space Mountain was being finished. And I remember seeing signs for WED Enterprises as the designer of Space Mountain. But I didn't really know who WED was. People said they were sort of this elite, secretive group. But it turned out that's the next time I saw that sign was at Cal Poly Pomona, where I was going to school and getting my degree. And they were recruiting. The reason they were recruiting was because it was 1980, and the company had committed to build Epcot and to build Tokyo Disneyland at the same time. And they didn't have anywhere close to the resources. So it was a big year for recruiting. Many of my closest friends from Imagineering all joined about the same time because it was a big, big year to bring in new people.
And you guys are really considered the second generation Imagineers. The original Imagineers were passing the torch to you guys.
Well, we're definitely, I think, we are the second generation because the first generation, who you know well, the John Hench and Claude Coates and Exitensio and those folks worked closely with Walt, and then we joined and we worked for them. And I wouldn't say they passed the torch. What I would say is the company had to expand. And the old way that they could expand was to have a bunch of kind of young talent come in. And we could learn from these senior Imagineers, and they could direct us, and we could kind of go off and do a lot of the running around, the hard work, that kind of thing. And they could extend their talents on a broader field.
Yeah.
And so that's the way a lot of us got to know these incredible talents. It's the way that these projects got done. And it was the beginning of, I would say, a kind of a professionalization of Wet Enterprises, meaning it wasn't just a little group kind of hand making everything. It had to become a group that, to do something like Epcot, which was a huge risk for the company, they had to really become a more professional managed organization. And so we all helped do that too.
So really, in a sense, the original Imagineers, the Mark Davis, the Claude Coates, the John Henches, all of those folks, Exitensio, as you mentioned, they became sort of like team captains or coaches with teams of people that
in
they
many
were,
ways.
that
Bob
they were
Gurr,
sort
Bob
of, yeah,
Gurr,
Bob Gurr.
Bob Gurr is out there so much talking about his history with the company. They focused us and directed us out to what needed to be done. And yeah, we brought new talents to it and we brought new ideas to the whole thing. But we were listening to them. They knew Disney. They knew how to get it, how to position everything, how to create it. And then it fell to us to really to go and figure out how to get it done.
Yeah.
And by the time those two projects, Tokyo Disneyland and Epcot, were finished, there was a much larger stock of Imagineers who knew how to go and get, complex projects done.
By that point, you guys were really becoming seasoned Imagineers.
We were becoming seasoned and knew. The nice thing about coming in at that time as a young person is there was not much structure, so you got to learn everything. You could be out in the model shop with Harriet Burns, or in the paint studio with Joyce Carlson, or out in a AA shop with Wathel Rogers, or everybody was accessible, everybody was friendly, everybody was down to earth, casual, very flat organization. Just couldn't be a better time to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. And not to rush through your Imagineering career, because I feel like we're going to have you back to really drill into that, because I think we could spend multiple episodes talking about all the various projects. But just to fast forward a little bit, you rose up through the ranks. You became president of Walt Disney Imagineering, and I think your crowning achievement, maybe, you tell me, is the opening of Shanghai Disneyland Park.
Yeah, in my earliest time at Imagineering, I went almost within about 18 months of joining, I went to Tokyo to work on Tokyo Disneyland. And I think had it happened differently, my career might have been different. But Japan being a fairly exotic place at that time, not too westernized yet, and it being the first Disney park outside the United States, my focus became global pretty fast. And so my whole career has been working with Tokyo, working in Paris, in Hong Kong, in Shanghai. And so I always had a pretty global view of what Disney is about. And certainly you couldn't ask for, there aren't that many Disneylands that get built in this world. And so to be able to build the first one in China, to be able to build the first one, in this time period with new technologies and new techniques and all those things and a new culture was really an honor to be there. So I was really lucky to be there for that.
So let's shift gears because, I'm trying to get a lot into this interview, and it's really
Yeah.
about the fact that you have two new books coming out. You have Dream Chasing, My 4 Decades of Success and Failure with Walt Disney Imagineering, which is coming out from Disney Editions in September. And then in October, you have a book called Ghost Dog, a novel coming out on October 15th. And so I guess how did you transition, or how did you become an author? What was your calling? Were you working on Shanghai Disneyland and say, "Oh, I've got this idea that would make a great story and I'm going to start writing it"? How did that come about for you?
Well, first of all, I feel like the luckiest guy in the world to have these two books coming out. And a huge, huge debt to you, Dave, and Nancy for seeing the vision of Ghost Dog. But literally, what you said, when I was designing Shanghai Disneyland, I'd always been interested in story, always been interested in writing and filmmaking. And I started taking extension classes at UCLA in screenwriting. And as tired as I was at the end of a day at WDI, I would get on the highway in Glendale and drive all the way out to UCLA and go to like a 3-hour class on screenwriting, where you'd have like 6 other people there and you had to bring pages. You had to have pages that you wrote, and they would just rip each other to shreds over these pages. And it was great experience in storytelling, and also great experience because we had to write, a full screenplay each course, and trying to figure out how to do something that turned pages, that gripped people into a story, and made them want to go to the next page. And so I learned a lot in that process. But then I didn't really do that much with it. I went off to Shanghai. And then during COVID, I think I was so just frustrated by sitting on Zoom all the time and sitting, we didn't really have a lot of creative work. It was mostly management oriented. It was lots and lots of phone calls, all time zones. Is I started writing, and I wanted to write something. And so I started writing during COVID, actually. And I wrote Ghost Dog in, I think, the first year of COVID. And I frankly thought I would do it episodically on some website or something. I didn't know, if anyone would think it was as interesting as I did. And I was so lucky that you guys did. And then it was after.
What was the genesis, though, of the idea? I mean, what were you thinking about in terms of, wouldn't it be cool if X happened?
Well, it was a very simple idea, and my favorite attraction in the parks, at least one of my favorites in the parks, is the Haunted Mansion. And I was thinking about the fact that at the very end, when they say, a ghost will follow you home, and there you see the ghost in the vehicle with you. And I thought to myself, well, what if a ghost dog followed you home? And I love dogs. I've had 4 dogs in my adult life, and I've loved them all dearly. And it kind of put my two loves together, dogs and ghosts. And that was it. It was this dog from the Haunted Mansion follows the kid home, and what would happen? What would happen to their lives? What would happen, to the kid's life? And it all went out from there. And then I just started writing, and I didn't know anything about, writing, certainly not a story of that length that wasn't a screenplay. But I just got into the culture and that. And I think that what hit me early on was I grew up in Pomona, which is for your listeners, is about 30 minutes from Los Angeles. And it's kind of out towards, it's easy to go to Disneyland from there. And my father was in the space program, and he had this little thing, which is the Magic Kingdom card, so we could get discounted into Disneyland. And once a year we went to Disneyland. We usually went on my birthday. So Disneyland is a part of me. It's a part of growing up. And I remember going on the Haunted Mansion, if not the first year it opened, probably within a year of the opening, and it being really formative to me. So I decided to set it at that time with a family, sort of modeled after my own family, in that era when the Haunted Mansion opened. And what would happen to this nuclear family back in those days if suddenly they had a ghost living in their house with them?
Bob, let me just read to our listeners the sort of synopsis of the book. Get set for a white-knuckle journey into magic and adventure as the impossible becomes the new normal in Bob Weis's debut novel, Ghost Dog. Herbert recently lost his beloved dog. His parents take him to Disneyland to cheer him up. Herbert rides the Haunted Mansion, and on this fateful night, a ghost really does follow him home. And not just any ghost. Herbert finds himself trying to keep a ghost dog, which only he can see, a secret. But Herbert is acting weird, and his parents and best friend Casey know something is wrong. They try therapists, mystics, and even a seance back at Disneyland, but things only get worse. Herbert's new ghost dog attracts other ghosts from the mansion, and they are a rowdy bunch who turn Herbert's otherwise normal family life upside down. To get the ghosts back where they belong, the family goes on a wild adventure across country, chasing science, design technology, braving ghostly occurrences, and nearly getting lost in a storm. Will they make it in time? Will Herbert be able to say goodbye to his ghost friends and his new ghost dog? A family adventure. Well, I have to say, I've read the book and I love it. And it's classified as sort of a young adult novel, but I think it's really for everybody. I mean, this is really a fun book. It's a wild ride.
I think it's for everybody. It's an adventure. I think if I think about what I love intrigue, I love mystery, I love adventure. So I really liked the idea that initially he doesn't know how this dog got there. It takes him a long time to find out how it got there. Lots of people have theories about what they should do to get rid of the ghost, sort of send the dog, back to the Haunted Mansion. So I think it is for everybody, and I think it's especially for two groups. I think people who really love Disneyland and the Haunted Mansion will love the book, but I also think people who love dogs will love the book. Those two groups together is a pretty good group, I think. But I think people just love adventure stories and intriguing stories and mysteries that you have to solve, empowering young people to try to solve them. I think there's a lot there to enjoy. And I think it is a page turner. I tried to as we say, I know you know this as a filmmaker, Dave, we say in scenes you like to come in late and go out early, come in, when the action's already started, and go out before it ends. So I tried to keep it moving very fast. And I think one of the things that occurred to me, sorry, David, one thing that occurred to me along the way was I love reality and I love parting from reality. So I like being at Disneyland, being at, the kids go to WED Enterprises to try to figure out whether there's somebody there who can help them with this dog mystery. And so I know enough about the history of WED and enough about Disneyland to be able to know what the reality is, but then sort of taking the handcuffs off and saying, yeah, but you can have fun with it too. This is not reality. This is fun. So,
Yeah.
I think it's got a lot of good behind the scenes stuff too.
It's a very fun book, Bob. And the other thing that I love about this book, because I've got an advanced copy just like you do, is the glow in the dark cover.
Oh
This
yeah.
is a book that has a glow in the dark cover to it that if you leave it in sunlight and then at night shut off the lights, it glows in the dark. It is the coolest thing. I'm like a 12-year-old with this book, because
I
I'm charging it in the sunlight and I'm running into a clothes closet, and closing the door and looking at it in the dark, and it's so cool to see it glowing in the dark.
I think the challenge of as I learn, the challenge of doing anything like this, creating something, a creative product like a book, is the first part is to create it. The second part is to have other people who believe in it and other people who have great ideas. And you and Nancy came along, read the book, encouraged me to continue with it. And you brought in this idea of the glow in the dark. We developed the idea of using that sort of classic look with the wallpaper, except it's dogs, it's little paws. We really took and blew out the idea of dogs, and it just makes it fun, and it makes it fantastic. And I do the same thing. I take the book outside, I charge it up, and I bring it in at night so I can watch it when I'm getting ready to go to sleep. I love it. But I think that having talented people like you guys, to take a look at a product and then saying, here's what we could do with that. Here's what we could do wonderful with that to really make it a magical collector's item for fans of reading, fans of dogs, fans of the Haunted Mansion is really exciting, and I just can't wait for it to come out.
And the other thing too that I mean we'd be remiss if we didn't bring it up are the illustrations throughout the book that were done by George Scribner. George has been a guest on our show in the past. He's a friend, and he's just a super talented guy. And so I couldn't imagine anybody better to do the illustrations for this book,
George is a great friend and such an amazing talent, Disney animator, and an artist in his own right, in so many ways. And I went to George. I had worked with George quite a bit at Imagineering, and we always had a nice chemistry. And I thought, boy, it sure would be fun to work with George on this. And I pitched the story to him about the ghost dog, and he tapped into it. And we started playing around. And initially, I thought, well, maybe there'll be like a couple of illustrations, or maybe he'd do the cover or something like that. And he ended up doing 30 plus illustrations. I think they're all wonderful. They're so emotional and wonderful. And George as a creative thinker, he's such a great collaborator.
Yep.
You have fun with it. We really did the illustrations like film storyboards. I'd say let's move in tighter on that, or he'd say let's do that, or let's focus in on that part of the action. So although he is obviously the illustrator, the artist, and I'm not, it was really a fun collaboration. And hopefully somebody will consider these storyboards for a movie someday.
Well, I also kind of looked at it from the standpoint of really how you storyboard an attraction at the parks, because it's not just storyboarding for a film; it's storyboarding for an attraction, and the fact that it has that, so it's inspired by that, so. What I loved about reading this book was seeing those illustrations spotted all the way through the book that really helps the reader to visualize what the dog looks like, what Herbie looks like. And we can't not mention this, Bob. Why did you name Herbert the kid Herbert?
You're probably looking for some dark mystery there, like Herb Ryman,
I am.
I think
I thought it,
but
I
I
thought
think
of
I think Walt's does Walt have a brother named Herbert, or his father has it?
Yes.
He has
No,
a brother
no.
named
He
Walt.
had a brother named Herbert, and
There's a
then
lot of Herberts out there. It's a
yeah.
mystery. The readers will have to write me their theories
I
about it.
immediately went to Herb Ryman. I thought it was
I
your nod to Herb Ryman.
it can be. It could also be Walt's brother. Um, but I think, most of the action, as you know, takes place outside Disneyland. It takes place at their
Right.
home. It takes place on the
Sure.
road.
Yeah.
So George was really so able to capture that, and you have to really love dogs to be able to draw them, I think. And George, who did Oliver and Company, and understands dog behavior so well, and understands just the peculiarities of dogs' personalities, is such an important part of this. The relationship between the kids and the dog. I grew up reading Charlotte's Web and books like that, and those books, those classics, have mostly reading, but then they have a very small amount, but a moderate amount of illustrations built in throughout the chapters, and that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to just give you a flavor for what the feel of the characters are, but still allow your imagination to fill in all the details.
Sure.
The book, the illustrations are great, but the book seems like it's a lot of fun. I was able to scan the book, and it reminds me a lot of Benji meets Goosebumps.
That's a good
it's a good analogy.
That's a good way to think about it.
Well, because I grew up watching Benji as a kid. I used to love that dog show, and it has a lot of heart. It's a lot of fun. It's super exciting. And yes, I can totally see this becoming a Disney Plus, kind of film. I don't want to say it's an after school film, but it's one of those that is geared toward, the young adults and young at heart and just kids and teens that really have that connection to dogs and animals and the family dynamic, which is really cool in this book, which makes me smile from ear to ear. I mean, just the words on the page and Scribner's artwork and everything just really work well together. So it's a lot of fun.
It harkens
I think you're right, Aljon. I think that dogs are such a part of Disney history, Disney media. Dogs have been a part of so many movies that I grew up with, and many kids since have grown up with. That it's a great connection. Sorry, Dave.
I was going to say that it really is sort of reminiscent of the heyday of those Disney live action films in the 60s and 70s, like the Shaggy DA and, those types of films that were just fun family entertainment, those Disney films with Dean Jones, you can almost picture Dean Jones as the father, Herbie's father.
If I could channel Fred McMurray, I'd be the happiest
Fred McMurray.
person on
there
earth.
You go.
Yeah.
So Bob, this book is available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and also if listeners want to get an author signed copy, a copy signed by you, Bob Weis, they can go to the oldmillpress.com. and they can order a signed copy there. What's your expectation for this book? Because it's going to come out mid-October, just in time for Halloween.
I hope it is great. I think it's going to be great for Halloween. It's a great Halloween story because it's a family story, yet it's got some just fun twists to it. I think it'll also do great over the holidays, as you've said, Dave. We're excited about that. And in addition to the glow in the dark, I was noticing in the few copies that we have now, how nice it feels. It's a very soft book. It's a great size. It feels nice in your hand. It feels like you just want to read it. I just think as an art piece, what you and Nancy have done, and George and all of us have done, is create something just a really wonderful piece of art to have. So
It's a
I
beautiful
can't
key.
can't wait to
It's a
have it out
beautiful
there.
book. It's just a beautifully crafted book, which I think is fantastic. Before we go, I just want to also plug your Dream Chasing: My 4 Decades of Success and Failure with Walt Disney Imagineering. The thing that struck me about this book, Bob, right off the bat, was that you had the courage to put in the word failure, success and failure. Most people would not own up to that, and I applaud you for it, because I think failure is part of success.
I think failure is part of success, and success is part of failure too, right? I mean, we all have these ups and downs, and uh, I was talking to Simon Sinek about the book, and he wrote a nice piece for the back cover. Um, but we talked about this idea of dream chasing, and the fact that it's one thing to have an idea or to have a dream about something. It's quite another to be willing to chase it, to be willing to aggressively try to make something happen. And you know from animation, I know from Imagineering, that in order to make things happen, not only do you have to believe it and really be willing to chase it, but you have to get a whole lot of other people to chase it with you, to be able to collaborate with you and hold an idea together. And sometimes things happen because they should happen, and sometimes things that happen don't happen for one reason or another.
Yeah.
So it's all part of life. It's all part of that. But your ability to stay focused, to make things happen, to believe in it, is really that thing that makes a difference.
Oh, it absolutely does. People wishing for stuff that you could wish all you want. It's not going to come through unless you put in the elbow grease to make it happen.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of the message of the book. It's not an autobiography, although it has a lot of autobiographical elements in it. It really is a story about, sometimes when you go to Disneyland or you go to Epcot or Shanghai Disneyland, you might think that these things follow a clear path from A to B. You started with this idea and you ended up with this idea. And they go all over the place. I do a profile on the Tower of Terror, which is a great ride we developed, but it didn't start at all anywhere close to where it finally rested. All these things, and I'm sure that all of our great colleagues of the past, from Mark Davis to X to all those people we've been talking about, they did the same thing, right? These things went up and down. They storyboarded. They tried it in another way. That's just part of the creative process, and you have to be willing to follow that road. It's quite a road to get to something.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting a copy of that book, Dream Chasing: My 4 Decades of Success and Failure with Walt Disney Imagineering. It's coming from Disney Editions. That releases in early September, and that's also available wherever you get your books for pre-order. And once again, I'm going to mention Ghost Dog, because if you want a signed copy, a copy signed by the great Bob Weis, you can get that at theoldmillpress.com, and I know Aljon will have links.
I'll do better than that, Dave. If I'll come over to your house and walk your dog. How about that?
You better watch out, because we're going to wind up getting
There's a lot of dogs out there.
We're going to get a flood of requests for people to come and have you walk their dog. But
I've been so enchanted working with you on a little bit that I know about publishing, that I really encourage everybody to pre-order. But I also order them if they can, or hope that if they can, they'll run down and find a local bookstore, find their bookstore that's still downtown, and go pre-order the book there, and tell their bookstore there, how much they appreciate them, because books are great and bookstores are great. We all love them, but they could use the love right now too.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to the Skull Rock podcast. We're absolutely going to have you back again, maybe early next year after you get through all your book signings and everything and things simmer down a little bit, because I'd love to do a deep dive onto all the parks you worked on and really hear some behind the scenes stories from you. So with that
would be great.
With that, I'm going to say thank you, Bob, for being on the Skull Rock podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Aljon. Thank you both.
Take my hand. Kat, take my hand. Just take my hand. Okay. And let me tell you about the great Disney travel deal for this week, because the monitor got back on. Yay. You can save on rooms at select Disney resorts this fall and holiday season. It is that time of year after all. So take advantage of this deal. Now you can contact Kristen at themeparksandcruises@gmail.com to save. You can take advantage of her expertise and navigation of the Walt Disney World, Disneyland, and so many more theme parks and cruise lines, little travel portals, so you don't have to do it yourself. All right? And you can save on tons for your vacation. You can see I'm vamping because I'm trying to get everything back up and running here. But you can stay in the magic this fall and holiday season at select Disney Resort hotels. Save up to 30% on rooms for stays most nights November 24th through December 25th this year. You can enjoy savings Sunday to Thursday nights from October 6th to November 21st. What a deal. Plus, get free park hopper benefits when you take advantage of this offer and upgrade to a Walt Disney hotel room and ticket package that includes non-discounted 4-day or longer date-based theme park tickets with Park Hopper. So hop all you like and save up to 30% at all these great Disney resorts like Animal Kingdom Lodge, Boardwalk Inn, the Beach Club Villas Resort, Port Orleans. You can save up to 25% on some of the other more popular resorts like Bay Lake Tower and Disney's All-Star Sports and Coronado Springs, my personal favorite, right? So there is tons of savings to be had. Explore all the different ways you can save by contacting Kristen today at themeparksandcruises@gmail.com. But wait, there's more, because Universal Orlando has a brand new ticket deal as well, surrounding all that hype around Epic Universe. And so it's all going to be there for your taking. Halloween Horror Nights is really just a few weeks away when it comes down to it. And I love Halloween Horror Nights. That is great if you're a horror movie buff, a scare buff like myself. Of course, the new DreamWorks land is also open with Shrek and Kung Fu Panda and Trolls, all the stuff that my kids love. Absolutely. So go ahead. You can do this Florida residence exclusive deal for unlimited day ticket, providing access to Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure for an unlimited number of days now through December 18th this year. It's a big deal, right? It's only like $199 plus tax. It's absolutely amazing. It won't get you into Hollywood Horror Nights because that's another separate hard ticket event, but a great deal nonetheless. Take advantage of that deal and so much more for the Universal Orlando Resort, as well as Universal Studios over there at on the left coast, or Disneyland, or the Disney Cruise Line in the new Treasure Ship, or any cruise line whatsoever. Once again, book with Kristen for get your free quote today. Save on all these great deals. Once again, themeparksandcruises@gmail.com. That's themeparkandcruises@gmail.com.
Hi, this is producer Carolyn Bates, and you're listening to the Skull Rock podcast.
Your attention, please. Now loading on track number 1 for a trip around Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom.
Skull Rock Podcast.
All aboard.
Your Main Street to the world of Disney.
Yet another great interview. I hope our audience has been enjoying these interview segments that we're going to be doing for the next few weeks right here on Skull Rock Podcast. But don't forget, if you love Disney and pop culture, be sure to like and subscribe to all of our feeds there. Wherever you find podcasts, of course, we're all available on all the major services, including now YouTube. So check that out as well. And we would certainly love it if you gave us those 5-star reviews. Everything helps the algorithm and gets us in front of more people. Leave us those reviews and those algorithms will just be popping. Skull Rock Podcast. Share the show as well. We're on all the socials, as I mentioned, Facebook, X. Dave and I are both on LinkedIn, also Instagram. And you can check out the vault of shows there at skullrockpodcast.com. You can even throw some money in the tip jar, if you will. There's a little sponsor link in there if you feel so inclined to support what we do as we bring you this show for free every single week. You can also email Dave and myself. Listener feedback is important. Dave at skullrockpodcast.com or Aljon at skullrockpodcast.com. You can also find me on Instagram. The best way to find me, Aljon Go on Instagram. You can also check out my other podcast that I host with my wife, Kristen, and Kat R. Corey, called Dining at Disney Podcast, where we talk about Disney parks and food. You can find that drop twice a week, wherever you find podcasts as well. Dave?
Yeah, and Aljon, as I've been mentioning to people over the past month or so, February 21st to the 23rd is the Animation You All Expo in Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah. And we're going to be there. Aljon and I are going to be there, believe it or not, in person together for the first time. And also, I just want to remind folks, you can hear my Tunes Behind the Tunes show on SiriusXM, Disney Hits, channel 133. Each month we spotlight a new show. You can get signed copies of my books at theoldmillpress.com, and of course you can check me out on davidbossert.com with a bunch of free content and free stuff you can send away for. And with that, Aljon, I'm going to say go out, have a fantastic week, everybody. Be kind to one another, and we'll see you back here next Monday right here on the Skull Rock Podcast.